The war room of the Krillian flagship buzzed with angry voices. General Vexthar stood 12 feet tall, his green scales catching the light from the battle screens. His yellow eyes stared at the planet below them. For 3 months, his army had tried to take this small world. For 3 months they had failed. "This is embarrassing," Admiral Zixana said. Her voice was cold and sharp. She was smaller than the general but twice as mean. "We have the best ships in the galaxy. We have the best weapons. Why can't we beat these weak creatures?" The planet was called Kepler 438b by the humans, but the Krillians called it Target 7. It was rich in rare metals that powered their ships. The aliens living there had formed a group to fight back. They were losing, but they would not give. Commander Krelmoth looked up from his data screen. He was the one who gathered information about their enemies. "I have been studying these new creatures called humans," he said. "They joined the galactic community last year. The reports say they are weak and soft." General Vexthar laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "Humans? I have heard of them. They live on a small blue planet. They fight each other more than they fight aliens. What about them?" "We captured one of them 2 days ago," Krelmoth said. "He was with a small ship that tried to help the defenders. His name is Jake Sullivan. He is a soldier from something called the United States Marine Corps." Admiral Zixana walked to the window that showed space. "One human? What can one weak creature do against our mighty army?" In the prison cells below, Jake Sullivan sat on a metal bench. His hands were tied behind his back with energy cuffs. His uniform was torn and dirty. Blood had dried on his face from the fight when they captured him, but his eyes were still sharp and alert. Jake had been watching his captors for 2 days. He listened to them talk. The translator device in his ear let him understand their language. He learned that the Krillians were proud and thought they were better than everyone else. They also followed orders without thinking. This gave Jake an idea. The guard outside his cell was lazy. He played games on a small device instead of watching the prisoner. Jake had counted the guard shifts. He knew when they changed. He knew which guards were careful and which ones were not. Back in the war room, General Vexthar was getting more angry. 3 months, he roared. "My emperor expects this planet to be ours by now. If we fail, he will feed us to the void worms." "Admiral," Zixana smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I have an idea. Let us have some fun with this human prisoner. We can drop him on the planet and watch him die. It will be good entertainment while we plan our next attack." Commander Krelmoth tilted his head. "That seems like a waste. We could learn about human fighting from him." "What is there to learn?" General Vexithar said. "Humans are new to space. They have no real weapons. They are probably afraid of the dark." Admiral Zixana's smile grew bigger. "Let us make a bet. We drop this human on the worst part of the battlefield. If he lives for more than 6 hours, we will study his species. If he dies quickly like we expect, we will destroy his home planet, as a warning to other weak races." The other commanders in the room started to laugh. They thought this was very funny. They had never seen a human fight. They thought humans were like the small, weak creatures from their own home worlds. "Yes," General Vexthar said. "This will be fun, but let us make it fair. We give him some basic armor and a weapon. We want to see how long he can run before something kills him." Commander Krelmoth was not laughing. He had read reports about humans. They had destroyed themselves in wars for thousands of years. They had survived on a planet full of dangerous animals. They had learned to fight in every type of place, but he said nothing. His commanders would not listen to him anyway. Jake heard the guards talking about the plan. One guard thought it was cruel. The other guard said humans were too weak to feel real pain. Jake kept his face blank, but inside, he was thinking hard. The Marines had taught him many things. They taught him how to fight in jungles, deserts, and cities. They taught him how to survive when everything went wrong. Most important, they taught him that the enemy's biggest mistake was thinking they knew what he would do. Hours later, 4 guards came to get Jake. They put him in a small room with armor and weapons on the wall. The armor was basic Krillian gear. It was heavy and clunky, made for their large bodies. The weapon was a pulse rifle that shot energy bolts. "Put it on, human," one guard said. "You are going on a trip." Jake put on the armor. It did not fit well, but it would stop some bullets. He picked up the rifle and checked how it worked. It was simple to use, but the energy pack would not last long in a real fight. They pushed him into a drop pod. It was a small metal ball with a chair inside. The pod would fall from space and crash on the planet. Most soldiers hated drop pods. Jake had used them many times in training. As the pod door closed, Jake heard Admiral Zixana's voice on the speaker. "Enjoy your last few hours. Human, try to make it interesting for us to watch." The pod launched from the ship. Jake felt the familiar feeling of falling through space. Through the small window, he could see the planet getting bigger. Explosions lit up the surface like tiny stars. Smoke rose from burning forests. Jake started to plan. The Krillians thought they were sending him to die. They thought he would run around in panic until something killed him. They were wrong. Jake Sullivan was a United States Marine. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He had survived when his unit was cut off behind enemy lines for 2 weeks. He had learned that the best way to win a fight was to make the enemy fight the battle you wanted, not the battle they expected. The planet was getting very close now. Jake could see the 2 armies fighting below. The Krillians had the high ground and better weapons. The defenders were hiding in caves and ruins. Both sides were fighting the same boring battle they had been fighting for months. Jake smiled for the first time since his capture. The Krillians wanted a show. He would give them one they would never forget. But it would not be the show they expected. The drop pod hit the atmosphere and started to burn. Jake held on tight and prepared for impact. In a few minutes, he would be on the ground. The real war was about to begin. The drop pod hit the ground like a meteor. Dirt and rocks flew everywhere. The metal ball bounced twice and rolled into a crater. Steam rose from its hot surface. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the shooting started. Both armies saw the pod land between their lines. The Krillians thought the defenders had called for help. The defenders thought the Krillians had dropped a new weapon. Everyone started firing at the smoking crater. Energy bolts and projectile rounds hit the ground around the pod. Jake waited inside, counting the different weapon sounds. He could hear at least 6 different types of guns. The defenders had older weapons that made sharp cracks. The Krillians had energy weapons that hummed and buzzed. Jake pushed the pod door open just a crack. He could see the battlefield clearly now. The Krillians had built a base on a hill about half a mile away. They had energy shields, automated turrets, and about 200 soldiers. The defenders were hiding in old ruins and cave openings in the rocks below. They had maybe 50 fighters. A pulse bolt hit the pod right next to Jake's head. The metal was getting too hot to touch. He had to move now or cook like dinner. Jake kicked the door open and rolled out fast. He landed behind a big rock just as more shots hit where he had been. His Marine training took over. Find cover, check your weapon, look for enemies, plan your next move. The pulse rifle felt strange in his hands, but the basics were the same as any gun. Point, shoot, try not to die. Jake checked the energy pack. It showed about 30 shots left. That was not much for a real fight. Something moved in the ruins below him. Jake looked through the rifle's scope and saw a figure waving at him. It was wearing different armor than the other defenders. Jake kept his weapon ready but did not shoot. The figure held up something that looked like a radio. A voice spoke in his earpiece, but it was not the alien language. It was English, with an American accent. "Hey Marine, don't shoot. I'm Captain Lisa Park, United States Space Command. I've been stuck on this rock for 2 weeks." Jake almost smiled. He was not alone after all. "This is Sergeant Jake Sullivan, Marines. How did you get here?" "Long story. My communication ship got shot down during the first Krillian attack. I've been hiding and trying to fix my radio. Are you here with the rescue team?" Jake looked at the hundreds of aliens shooting at each other around him. "Not exactly, it's complicated. Where are you?" "In the ruins, about 100 yards down the hill from you. There's a tunnel entrance behind a broken wall. I can guide you here, but you'll have to move fast. Both sides think you're the enemy right now." Jake studied the ground between his position and the ruins. It was open space with some rocks and shell holes for cover. The defenders would see him coming, but they might not shoot if Lisa told them he was friendly. What about the bird people and the others? Will they let me pass? Maybe. Captain Ryan. Foster leads the defenders. He's a good soldier, but he's desperate. They've been losing this fight for months. If I tell him you're here to help, he might listen. Jake made his decision. Staying in one place would get him killed. Moving might get him killed too, but at least he would die doing something useful. I'm coming to you. Tell your friends not to shoot the human. Jake waited for a break in the shooting, then ran. He moved from rock to rock, keeping low. The defenders' weapons tracked him, but they did not fire. The Krillians on the hill saw him moving and sent a few energy bolts his way, but they were too far away to aim well. He dove behind a broken wall just as a Krillian turret found his range. The automated gun sent a stream of energy bolts that turned the wall into melted stone. Jake crawled along the ground until he found the tunnel entrance Lisa had mentioned. Lisa Park was waiting for him. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. Her Space Command uniform was dirty and patched. She had a pistol on her belt and some kind of electronic device in her hands. "Good to see another human face," she said. "I was starting to think I'd die on this alien rock without ever talking to someone from home again." "What's the situation here?" Jake asked, checking his rifle again. Lisa led him deeper into the tunnel. The walls were covered with strange writing that glowed softly in the dark. The defenders are from 3 different species. The bird people are called Zephyrians. They're fast and smart, but their weapons are weak. The crystal beings are Velthari. They're tough but slow. The bug people are Mexrathi. They're good at building things but not so good at fighting. They reached a larger cave where about 30 alien fighters were resting. Jake saw his first real look at non-human intelligence. The Zephyrians looked like giant eagles that walked on 2 legs. Their feathers were blue and green and their eyes were sharp and bright. The Velthari were made of what looked like living crystal. They glowed with soft inner light and moved like walking gemstones. The Mexrathi had 6 arms each and hard shell-like skin. They clicked and hummed when they talked. Captain Ryan Foster was a Zephyrian with silver feathers on his head. He looked at Jake with suspicious eyes. "Lisa tells me you are here to help us, human. But you fell from a Krillian ship. How do we know you are not a spy?" Jake set down his rifle to show he was not a threat. "Because I was their prisoner. They dropped me here for fun. They want to watch me die." Foster's head tilted to one side the way birds do when they are thinking. "That sounds like something Krillians would do. They are cruel and proud. But what can one human do that we cannot? We have been fighting for months and losing ground every day." "I can do things they don't expect," Jake said. "You've been fighting their kind of war. Direct attacks, defensive positions, the same tactics they use. That's why you're losing." Lisa looked up from her electronic device. "Jake, I've been monitoring their communications. The Krillians think this is just entertainment. They're not taking you seriously at all. Their security is relaxed and they're making mistakes." Jake nodded. This was what he had hoped for. "Good. When the enemy thinks you're not a threat, that's when you can hurt them the most." One of the Mexrathi soldiers clicked something that Lisa's device translated. "He says humans are supposed to be weak and cowardly. No offense, but that's what all the galactic databases say about your species." Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile he got when someone was about to learn a hard lesson. The databases are wrong. Humans have been fighting wars since before we discovered fire. We've learned a few tricks along the way. Foster ruffled his feathers. "What kind of tricks?" "The kind that win battles," Jake said. He looked around the cave at the tired, desperate faces of the defenders. "How well do you know the Krillian base?" Lisa brought up a holographic map on her device. "I've been watching them for weeks. They have strong shields on the front, but the backside just has a fence and some sensors. They think all attacks will come from your positions. What about guards?" "They change shifts every 4 hours. The next change is in 20 minutes. For about 5 minutes, there's only half the normal number of guards while they switch positions." Jake studied the map. The Krillian base was built like a fortress, but fortresses had weaknesses if you knew how to find them. I need to get close to their base without them seeing me. Can you create a distraction? Foster's eyes got brighter. What kind of distraction? Something that makes them look the wrong way. A fake attack on your positions, maybe some explosions. Nothing too big, just enough to keep their attention focused on you. One of the Velthari spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Lisa's device translated. She says the plan sounds dangerous for you. If you are caught alone in their base, they will kill you slowly. Jake checked his rifle one more time. They can try. But first, they have to catch me. And Marines are very good at not being caught. Foster stood up and spread his wings slightly. I will order the distraction attack, but if this fails, we will all die anyway. The Krillians are planning a final assault tomorrow morning. We cannot hold them off much longer. Then we better make sure it doesn't fail, Jake said. Lisa handed him a small communication device. This will let us stay in touch. I can guide you and warn you about patrols. Jake clipped the device to his armor. Give me 15 minutes after the distraction starts. Then I'll show these lizards why you should never underestimate a human Marine. As the defenders prepared for their fake attack, Jake moved to the tunnel entrance. The Krillian base sat on the hill like a metal cancer on the landscape. In a few minutes, he would be crawling through their defenses. The aliens watching from their ships above thought they were about to see a human die in an amusing way. Jake had different plans. He was going to show them what humans did best, turn the impossible into the inevitable. The fake attack started exactly on time. Defender weapons lit up the night as they fired at the Krillian shields. It was not a real assault, just enough noise and light to get attention. The Krillian soldiers on the base turned their weapons toward the ruins below. Jake moved like a shadow. He had painted his armor with mud and ash to break up its shape. His face was covered with dirt. He moved between rocks and shell holes, staying low and quiet. The Marines had taught him that the best camouflage was not being where the enemy expected you to be. The back of the Krillian base was just like Lisa had said, a simple fence with some motion sensors. The guards were watching the fake battle, not looking behind them. Jake found a spot where an explosion had damaged the fence. He crawled through the gap on his belly. Inside the base, Jake could see the real size of the Krillian force. There were at least 300 soldiers, not the 200 he had estimated. They had heavy weapons, flying scouts, and enough supplies for a long war. But they also had something else: overconfidence. The Krillians were not being careful. They left weapons lying around. They talked loudly about their plans. They did not post guards in places where they should have. They thought the defenders were too weak to be a real threat. Jake found what he was looking for near the center of the base: a communication array with multiple antennas and satellite dishes. It was connected to computers that controlled everything from supply orders to tactical reports. Lisa had been right. If he could access their communications, he could learn everything about their operation. A Krillian soldier walked past, complaining to his friend about the boring guard duty. They did not see Jake hiding in the shadows 20 feet away. Jake waited until they were gone, then moved to the communication station. The computers were protected by passwords, but Jake had learned something useful during his 2 days as a prisoner. Krillians used military titles and unit numbers for most of their passwords. It took him only 3 tries to get into their system. What he found was better than he had hoped. The Krillians were not just fighting for this planet. They had attacked 6 other worlds in this sector. They were using this planet as a communication hub to coordinate all their operations. If Jake could disrupt their communications, he could affect their entire invasion plan. Jake plugged Lisa's communication device into the Krillian computer. "Lisa, are you getting this data?" Her voice came back excited. "Jake, this is incredible. They're using quantum encryption, but it's an old system. I can break it if you give me 10 more minutes." "You've got 5 minutes. Someone's coming." Jake heard footsteps approaching. He quickly copied files onto a storage device and closed the computer programs. A Krillian officer walked up to check the communication station. Jake hid behind a power generator, holding his breath. The officer looked at the computers but did not see anything wrong. He was more interested in watching the fake battle than doing his job. After a minute, he walked away. Lisa, I need to move. Did you get what we need? More than we need. Jake, their entire battle plan is here. They're planning to attack at dawn with everything they have. But there's something else. They have a prisoner transport arriving in 2 hours. It's carrying captured soldiers from all the other planets they've attacked. Jake felt his anger building. The Krillians were not just invaders, they were slavers too. How many prisoners? Over 200. Jake, some of them are human. There's a pilot named Alex Carter who was shot down 3 weeks ago. That changed everything. Jake had come here to survive and maybe help the defenders. Now he had a chance to rescue human prisoners and hurt the Krillian war effort at the same time. Can you access their prisoner transport schedule? Already on it. The ship will land at the supply depot on the other side of the base. It's only lightly guarded because they think the prisoners are too weak to escape. Jake smiled in the darkness. The Krillians were about to learn that captured humans were not the same as defeated humans. He moved through the base like a ghost, studying guard patterns and security systems. The Krillians had made every mistake that overconfident armies make. They had weak spots in their defenses. They followed predictable routines. Most important, they did not expect anyone to attack them from behind. Jake found the base's main power generator. It was a fusion reactor that provided energy for the shields, weapons, and computers. It was also unguarded because the Krillians thought no one was smart enough to find it or brave enough to attack it. Jake set up a small explosive charge from his marine kit. It would not destroy the reactor, but it would cause a power failure at exactly the right time. He set the timer for 90 minutes. Next, he found the armory. The Krillians had enough weapons to fight for months. They also had explosives, grenades, and some kind of energy mines. Jake took what he could carry and set more charges. As he moved through the base, Jake began to understand something important. The Krillians were good soldiers, but they were not good thinkers. They followed orders without asking questions. They did not adapt when things changed. They fought the same way every time. Lisa, I need you to send a message to Captain Foster. Tell him to get ready for a real attack in 90 minutes, not a fake one this time. Jake, what are you planning? I'm going to give the Krillians exactly what they deserve. A fair fight. Jake's next stop was the motor pool where the Krillians kept their vehicles. They had hovering tanks, armored transports, and fast scout ships. They also had something Jake had not expected, a human vehicle. It was an old Earth military jeep, probably captured from some other battle. The Krillians had been studying it to understand human technology. Jake checked under the hood. The engine was still good, and there was fuel in the tank. Jake hot-wired the jeep like his uncle had taught him when he was 16. The engine started, with a familiar rumble. It sounded like home. The prisoner transport ship was landing now. Jake could see it through the base's spotlights. It was a big, ugly vessel with heavy armor and multiple gun turrets. The Krillians who met it looked bored and tired. They were not expecting trouble. Jake drove the jeep slowly toward the landing pad. In the darkness, with his muddy armor, he looked like any other Krillian soldier moving equipment. The guards did not pay attention to him. The transport ship's cargo door opened and Jake saw the prisoners. They were aliens from a dozen different species, all chained together and looking beaten down. But in the middle of the group, Jake saw 3 humans. One of them was a young man in a pilot's uniform. That had to be Alex Carter. The other 2 were a woman in engineering coveralls and an older man in what looked like ship captain's clothing. Jake waited until the guards started moving the prisoners toward the detention center. Then he drove the jeep straight at them. The guards were surprised, but not worried. They thought Jake was just a careless driver. Right up until he started shooting. Jake's pulse rifle cut down 3 guards before they realized what was happening. The prisoners scattered and the surviving guards tried to take cover. But Jake had chosen his moment well. They were in an open area with nowhere to hide. "Alex Carter!" Jake shouted in English. "I'm Jake Sullivan, United States Marines. We're getting out of here." The young pilot looked up with amazement. "You're human. How did you get here?" "Long story. Can you drive?" Alex nodded. Jake tossed him the keys to the jeep. "Get the other humans and anyone else who can fight. We're about to turn this base into a parking lot. The escaping prisoners created exactly the chaos Jake wanted. Alarms started going off all over the base. Krillian soldiers ran in every direction trying to find out what was happening. In the confusion, Jake and the freed prisoners disappeared. Into the darkness, Jake's explosives went off right on schedule. The power went out, plunging the base into darkness. Emergency lights came on, but they only made the shadows deeper. The Krillians' advantage in weapons and numbers meant nothing if they could not see their targets. Lisa, now would be a good time for Foster's attack. Already started. Jake, you beautiful crazy Marine, you've turned their organized army into a confused mob. The real attack began as the defenders charged up the hill. But this time, they were not attacking a prepared fortress. They were attacking a base with no power, confused guards, and enemies hiding inside its own walls. Jake gathered the freed, prisoners who could still fight. Alex Carter had found a Krillian flying scout and somehow figured out how to pilot it. The engineering woman, who said her name was Rachel, had hacked into a weapons turret and turned it against the Krillians. The older captain, Danny, had organized the alien prisoners into a fighting unit. For the first time in months, the defenders were winning. The Krillians found themselves fighting on three fronts: the defenders attacking from below, the freed prisoners attacking from inside, and the systematic destruction of their own base. Jake watched from the communication array as Krillian units tried to regroup. They were asking their ships in orbit for help, but Jake had one more surprise for them. He activated the last program Lisa had planted in their computer system. Every Krillian unit on the planet started receiving different orders. Some were told to retreat. Others were told to advance. The artillery was given targets that did not exist. The air support was sent to the wrong coordinates. In the space of 2 hours, Jake had turned the Krillians' greatest. Dawn came with the sound of explosions echoing across the planet. What had started as one human causing trouble at a single base was now spreading like wildfire. Jake stood in the ruins of the Krillian command center, watching their tactical displays show red warning lights from every continent. "This is impossible," Alex Carter said, staring at the screens. The young pilot had dirt on his face and a big grin. "Jake, what did you do to their computers?" "I gave them what they wanted," Jake replied, checking his rifle. "A coordinated military operation. They're just coordinating against themselves now." Lisa Park worked at 3 different computer stations at once. Her fingers moved across alien keyboards as data streamed past on the screens. "Jake, this is bigger than we thought. This planet isn't just a mining operation. It's the communication hub for their entire sector invasion." Rachel, the engineering woman they had rescued, pointed at a massive underground structure on the tactical display. "Look at this. There's a quantum communication array buried 3 miles down. It coordinates Krillian fleets across 12 star systems." Jake studied the display. The underground facility was huge, bigger than a city. It had its own power source, its own defenses, and enough computer power to run a small war. "How many Krillians are guarding it?" "Maybe 50, Lisa said. "They never expected anyone to find it, much less attack it. The surface battle was supposed to keep everyone busy while they used this place to coordinate their expansion." Danny, the older ship captain, looked up from a communication panel. "I'm picking up distress calls from Krillian ships in 6 different star systems. Their fleets are attacking each other because of the false orders you sent. They think there's been a coup in their government." Jake felt something he had not felt since this whole mess started. Hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope for victory, real victory that would save more than just this planet. "How long until they figure out what's really happening?" "Not long," Rachel said. "Maybe 2 hours before their officers realize the orders are fake. Then they'll shut down all communications and try to restart their command structure. Then, we better move fast," Jake said. "Lisa, can you hack their underground facility from here?" Lisa shook her head. "Not from this distance. The quantum encryption is too strong. I'd need to be physically connected to their main computer core." Alex checked his captured flying scout's fuel gauge. "I can get a small team there, but that underground place will be crawling with guards by now. They know something's wrong." Jake looked around at his small group of humans and the alien defenders who had joined them. Captain Foster had brought 20 of his best fighters. The freed prisoners had armed themselves with Krillian weapons. It was not a big army, but it was motivated. "We don't need to fight all their guards," Jake said. "We just need to get Lisa to their computer core long enough to plant a virus in their system." "What kind of virus?" Foster asked. The Zephyrian captain had lost some feathers in the night's fighting, but his eyes were bright with victory. Jake smiled. "The kind that turns their own communication network into a weapon against them." The plan was simple, which made it dangerous. Simple plans worked, but they also meant there was no backup if something went wrong. Alex would fly Jake and Lisa to the underground facility. They would break in, plant the virus, and get out before the Krillians realized what was happening. The underground facility had one weak point: the air ventilation system. It was too small for Krillian soldiers, but just big enough for humans. Jake and Lisa would crawl through the air ducts while Alex created a distraction above ground. "What if you don't make it out?" Rachel asked. Jake checked his weapons one more time. "Then you take everyone to the escape ships and get off this planet. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them that humans can fight these things and win." The flight to the underground facility took 20 minutes. Alex flew low and fast, using the valleys and mountains to hide from Krillian sensors. The entrance was hidden in a deep canyon, protected by energy shields and automated turrets. "There," Lisa pointed at a small opening in the canyon wall. "That's the main air intake. If we can get inside there, the ducts should lead us to the computer core." Alex hovered the flying scout near the opening while Jake and Lisa jumped out. The air intake was protected by a metal grating, but Jake's marine training had taught him how to deal with obstacles. A few shaped charges later, the grating was gone. The air ducts were dark, narrow, and hot. Jake and Lisa crawled for what felt like hours, following Lisa's electronic map of the facility. They could hear Krillian voices below them getting louder as they approached the computer core. "2 guards outside the main door," Lisa whispered, checking her scanner. 12 technicians inside the core room. This is going to be tight. Jake looked through a ventilation grating into the computer core. It was a massive room filled with quantum processors and data storage units. Holographic displays showed the status of Krillian operations across the galaxy. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "How long do you need?" Jake asked. 5 minutes to plant the virus. Another 5 to make sure it spreads to all their systems. Jake nodded. 10 minutes was a long time in a firefight, but it was doable. "When I start shooting, you run for the main computer terminal. Don't stop for anything." Jake kicked out the ventilation grating and dropped into the room. The Krillian technicians looked up in surprise. They had never seen a human before, and they wasted precious seconds trying to figure out what he was. Jake did not waste any time. His pulse rifle cut down 3 technicians before they could reach the alarm. The others scattered, looking for weapons and cover. But the computer core was designed for technical work, not fighting. There was nowhere to hide. Lisa dropped down behind Jake and ran for the main terminal. She plugged her portable computer into the Krillian system and started typing faster than Jake had ever seen anyone type. The guards outside heard the shooting and tried to break down the door. Jake had locked it from the inside, but it would not hold long. He moved to cover the door, reloading his rifle and checking his remaining ammunition. "How we doing, Lisa?" "Virus is uploading. 60% complete. The system is trying to fight it, but my code is adapting faster than their security." The door exploded inward. 2 Krillian guards rushed in with energy weapons. Jake was ready for them. His first shot caught the lead guard in the chest. The second guard dove for cover behind a computer bank. More guards were coming. Jake could hear them in the hallway, calling for backup and heavy weapons. He had maybe 2 minutes before they brought something that could kill him through any cover. 80%, Lisa called out. "Almost there." A Krillian grenade rolled into the room. Jake grabbed it and threw it back out the door before it exploded. The blast shook the whole facility and filled the hallway with smoke. 95%. Come on. Jake's rifle was running low on energy. He switched to a captured Krillian sidearm. It was heavier than he liked, but it would have to do. A new sound echoed through the facility. Explosions from above ground. Alex was keeping his part of the bargain. making enough noise to confuse the Krillians about what was really happening. "Done!" Lisa shouted. "The virus is in their system and spreading. Jake, we need to go now." But the hallway was full of Krillian soldiers. There was no way out the way they had come in. Jake looked around the computer core, searching for another exit. There, Lisa pointed at another air duct on the far side of the room. "That leads to the emergency escape tunnel." They had to cross 30 feet of open space with Krillian guards shooting at them. Jake laid down covering fire while Lisa ran. Then she covered him while he followed. The emergency tunnel was a straight shot to the surface, but it was not empty. Krillian technicians were fleeing through the same tunnel. Jake and Lisa had to fight their way up step by step. When they finally reached the surface, Alex was waiting with the flying scout. The canyon around the facility entrance was burning from his attack. "Did you get it?" he asked as they climbed aboard. "We got it," Jake said. "Now let's see what happens when you turn a galactic communication network into a chaos generator." As they flew back toward the main battlefield, Jake watched the tactical displays on the scouts' instruments. The virus was spreading through the Krillian network faster than their technicians could stop it. Ships across 6 star systems were receiving contradictory orders. Supply convoys were being sent to empty space. Military units were being told to retreat from victories and advance into disasters. The Krillians' greatest strength, their coordination and discipline, was becoming their greatest weakness. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The virus would only cause confusion for a few hours before the Krillians shut down their communication network and rebuilt it. He needed something more permanent. He needed to capture the planet completely and turn it into a base for human operations in this sector. The Krillians had made one critical mistake. They had shown humans exactly how their empire worked. Now it was time to teach them what humans did to empires that threatened their people. The sun was setting over the battlefield when Jake put his final plan into action. The planet's red sky was filled with burning Krillian ships falling like metal rain. The virus had done its work, but Jake needed something more permanent than computer chaos. He stood on the hill where the Krillian base used to be, looking up at the enemy flagship still orbiting above. Admiral Zixana and her commanders were probably wondering how their entertainment had turned into a disaster. Jake was about to give them a real show. "Lisa, are you sure this will work?" Alex asked. The pilot was nervous, and Jake did not blame him. The plan was crazy even by Marine standards. "The virus gave us access to their entire communication network," Lisa said, checking her portable computer. "Every ship, every base, every satellite in this sector is connected. If Jake's plan works, we won't just win this battle, we'll cripple their whole invasion force." Jake looked around at his small army: humans, Zephyrians, Velthari, Mixrathi, and freed prisoners from a dozen other species. They were tired, wounded, and outnumbered, but they had something the Krillians did not understand: the ability to work together without following orders. Captain Foster spread his wings and pointed at the orbital defense satellites that hung dead in space around the planet. "Those satellites were built by my people before the Krillians came. They have been dark for months. Can your virus bring them back online?" "Better than that," Jake said. Lisa found something interesting in the Krillian computer files. "They didn't destroy your satellites, they took control of them. Those weapons are still functional, just waiting for the right activation codes." Danny, the rescued ship captain, studied the tactical display. "There are 50 defense satellites in orbit. If we could turn them against the Krillian fleet..." "We can do more than that," Jake said. The Krillians built their strategy around using this planet as a coordination hub. Every ship in their sector fleet is programmed to respond to signals from this location. Lisa's virus is about to turn that against them. Rachel looked up from a captured Krillian communication panel. "Jake, I'm detecting massive fleet movements. Ships are jumping into this system from all over the sector. The Krillians are bringing everything they have to stop us." Jake smiled. It was the same smile he had worn in the alien prison cell, but now it was backed up by proven success. "Good. I was hoping they'd do that." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Jake would use the Krillian communication network to send a false emergency signal from Admiral Zixana herself. The signal would call all available ships to provide immediate support at specific coordinates in orbit around the planet. Those coordinates would put the entire Krillian fleet in perfect position for the planet's defense satellites to destroy them. The signal has to be perfect, Lisa warned. If they suspect it's fake, they'll scatter before we can hit them. Jake nodded. Then we better make it convincing. Use the Admiral's own voice patterns and military codes. Make it sound like she's facing a rebellion and needs immediate help. Lisa's fingers flew across her keyboard as she crafted the fake distress call. She used voice samples captured during the original battle and military protocols stolen from the Krillian computers. When she was finished, even Jake could not tell it was fake. Broadcasting now, Lisa said. The signal is going out on all Krillian military frequencies. They did not have to wait long. Ships began jumping into the system within minutes. Cruisers, destroyers, battleships, and support vessels appeared in flashes of light as they dropped out of hyperspace. The Krillian sector fleet was impressive, over 200 warships of various sizes. They're moving into the coordinates Jake specified, Alex reported from his scout's sensors. Looks like they're forming a protective formation around the flagship. Jake watched the enemy ships position themselves exactly where he wanted them. The Krillians were following their training perfectly, moving to protect their command ship and prepare for a battle against whatever threat had caused the Admiral's distress call. Lisa, can you access the satellite control systems? Already in. The satellites are powering up now. Jake, these things are armed with antimatter warheads. When they fire, it's going to be like setting off 50 suns. Jake looked up at the sky where hundreds of enemy ships hung like deadly stars. In a few minutes, those ships would discover that they had flown into the most elaborate trap in galactic military history. All satellites show ready, Lisa reported. Targeting solutions locked on the enemy fleet. Jake, once we fire, there's no going back. This will be the biggest space battle in this sector's history. Then let's make it count, Jake said. Fire everything. The defense satellites opened fire at exactly the same moment. 50 beams of concentrated antimatter energy reached out from orbit like the fingers of an angry god. Each beam was powerful enough to crack a moon in half. The Krillian fleet had seconds to realize what was happening before the first shots hit. Ships that had ruled a dozen star systems vanished in flashes of light. The neat formation that Admiral Zixana had ordered became a field of expanding plasma clouds. Some Krillian ships tried to escape, but they were trapped by their own coordination. The formation that was supposed to protect them from attack had become a killing ground. Ships collided with each other as they tried to flee. Others were destroyed by debris from vessels that had already been hit. Jake watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. This was not about revenge, though the Krillians deserved it. This was about sending a message to every species in the galaxy. Humans were not prey. The flagship is trying to escape, Alex reported. Admiral Zixana's ship is pulling back from the battle. Not yet, Jake said. Lisa, can you access their ship's computer systems? The virus is already spreading through their network. Give me 30 seconds. Jake counted down the time while the flagship tried to reach safe distance. But 30 seconds was not enough time to escape orbit, especially when your own computer systems were working against you. Got it, Lisa said. Their engines are shutting down. Navigation is offline. They're dead in space. Jake picked up the communication device and tuned it to the Krillian flagship's frequency. It was time to end this properly. Admiral Zixana, this is Sergeant Jake Sullivan, United States Marine Corps. You wanted to watch a human die for entertainment. Instead, you got to watch your entire sector fleet die for education. The Admiral's voice came back filled with rage and disbelief. This is impossible. You are one creature from a primitive world. How did you defeat a galactic empire? I had help, Jake said, looking around at his allies from a dozen different worlds. Something your empire never learned how to do. Work together instead of following orders. You have won this battle, human, but the Krillian Empire has thousands of fleets. We will return with overwhelming force. Jake's smile got wider. I'm counting on it. You see, Admiral, you made one critical mistake. You showed us how your empire works, your communication networks, your military protocols, your command structure. Lisa's virus is already spreading to every system you've ever conquered. There was a long silence from the flagship. When the Admiral spoke again, her voice was much quieter. "What do you want?" "I want you to send a message to your Emperor," Jake said. "Tell him that Earth is under human protection now. Tell him that any attack on human space will result in the complete destruction of Krillian military forces. Tell him that humans don't fight fair and we don't fight alone." Jake looked up at the setting sun painting the sky red and orange. 12 hours ago, he had been a prisoner dropped on a planet for alien entertainment. Now he was dictating terms to a galactic empire. "And, Admiral, tell your Emperor that if he wants to test human resolve, we'll be waiting. But next time it won't be one Marine. It'll be all of us." Jake cut the communication and turned to his friends. Captain Foster was clicking his beak, and what Jake had learned was Zephyrian laughter. Lisa was grinning as she watched Krillian ships throughout the sector receiving virus-infected data packets. Alex was already planning how to pilot the captured ships they would soon have. "What now?" Rachel asked. Jake looked around at the planet that had been a battlefield at sunrise and was now the first human military base outside Earth's solar system. "Now we clean up this mess and get ready for the real war, because this was just the opening move." As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Jake Sullivan realized something important. He had been dropped on this planet as a joke, a piece of entertainment for bored alien commanders. He was leaving it as the author of a new chapter in galactic history. The Krillians had wanted to see what one human could do when faced with impossible odds. They had gotten their answer, and it was not what they expected. Humans could win. News of the Sundown victory spread through hyperspace faster than ships could travel. The story grew with each telling. One human Marine, dropped for sport, who conquered a planet and destroyed a fleet before the day was over. But Jake knew the real story was bigger than one soldier or one battle. It was about what happened when free people worked together against tyranny. It was about the power of thinking instead of just following orders. It was about never giving up, even when the odds seemed impossible. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not just another species to be conquered or ignored. They were something new and dangerous.